G'day everyone, this is part 7 of the Xray xb4 Buggy build series. Now for part 7 what we'll be doing is be attaching the gearbox and suspension arms to the chassis. Now if you have been following this build series from the start, I have been doing things a little bit ahead just to save on time on filming, and I don't want to have this as a stretched out build series. But so what I did do is I did mention in the previous video that I would go ahead and attach the chassis plate, main chassis plate to the deck here, which I have done. But also, because there's a myriad of screws involved, I've also gone ahead and put the rear transmission suspension arms onto the chassis. So what I will do is I will show you how to put the front one on, but what I will do is I'll go through a few things with you first, as I've already done. Here I've put the plates on, the plate on and the rear part on. Now with the chassis you have 11 screws to bolt the plate on. Now one thing I will make mention is you have certain parts here, like these parts, all these screws rather, are the ones that hold the main plate to the deck. So what I will recommend you do is when you put the screws in, don't do them up completely tight. Do the outside screws like on here in a crisscross pattern, and then slowly tighten in the screws here so you don't tweak the chassis. And when I mean tweak the chassis, what you probably won't see it to the naked eye, but if you tighten one screw more than the other, the chassis can slightly be twisted, and that will affect the handling. Also, for when we are going to attach the main transmission housing to the chassis, there are two, I'll just flip this one over here, there are two holes here that aren't countersunk, and they are for two screws to go in to actually the main part of the chassis. And what I mean by that is, here we have the main screws to hold it on to the chassis, but there are two holes here that actually go through and hold the upper part of the housing together. So as you remember in the previous part of the build series, when we attached the front part of the housing to the rear part, there were just two screws that went in. So at that point then you use the two screws at the bottom here, and that will actually hold the whole housing together. So for this part we need our screws, and where did those other ones go? There they are. Now just give me a second folks, I need the 14mm. Just give me a quick second, since I didn't pay attention to what screws were what, I just have to quickly check. Don't want to lose the battery. Excuse me a sec folks, this is just taking a couple of seconds. Yes, those are the 14mm ones. Okay, so I need those. We don't need those at the time. Oh, we do need those, but those are for the top part. So we put the transmission on, and what I like to do is make sure I have all my screws. Okay, so we get our driver, and what I like to do is, in this case, is put each one in and just turn it a couple of times by hand, and it can be a bit of a fight, and it just helps it grab. Okay, let's start putting them in. Now when you're putting these in, it probably wouldn't hurt to do a bit of a crisscross pattern as well, because you don't want to have the housing slightly twisted. And by twisted I mean like tweaked, as I mentioned at the start of the video. Because what also, not only having it tweaked can affect the handling, but it can also let grit and grime and dirt get into the gears, because you've got to remember too is that the gears are plastic, unlike some other ones. Oh well, this is my first four-wheel drive off-road buggy that I've ever bought. I've got a Team Associated xb4, but the transmission is completely sealed, so no dirt can get inside. But you have to excuse me folks, I'll have to put it on its side here. I'm getting sore arms. But yeah, you want the transmission housing to be perfectly flat on the chassis, because in doing so you'll protect the gears, because especially too, as you recall in one of the previous videos when I was putting the diff in, you have to put some grease, and the grease will just make the dirt sit. So as we do it in a crisscross manner. Sorry if you can't see it folks, I'll just put that there. Okay, so that's basically the whole transmission housing attached to the chassis. Now we just put these screws in. These ones will probably be a little bit easier. You know what, I'm actually going to use this. So I do have a little bit of arthritis in my hands, so this kind of hurts a little bit. Oop. Alright, so that's that section done. Now what we have to do is attach the screws to here. You have to, at the start of the video you saw me just use the digital calipers to measure the length of the screws. You want to pay attention in your instruction manual what size screws go where, because if you use the wrong ones, if they're too long, you could poke a hole through something and wreck the chassis or something like that. So pay particular attention to what screws you're using. Alright folks, so that's the chassis and the transmission and suspension arms attached. The next part we'll be starting off with the steering, so that will be part 8. So it's starting to look a bit like a buggy now, so stay tuned for part 8.